But thank you all for being here today for another session of our Hill Country Eclipse Lunch and Learn series. Today, we are focusing on accessibility and inclusivity of the Eclipse, and I'm delighted to have two wonderful people joining us today. We have Allyson Bieryla from Harvard University. She works in the astronomy lab and is a telescope manager, and Soley Hyman, who is a doctoral candidate, is that correct? In astronomy and astrophysics at the University of Arizona. And both of these women, along with other members of their team, have been responsible in the development, creation, building, and implementation of LightSound devices, which allow the blind and visually impaired communities to experience the eclipse. So I couldn't think of a better set of women to talk to you all today, and a better project to discuss about involving minorities, underserved communities, and folks in this big event. So I will let you two take it away.
So thank you so much for the wonderful introduction, Dawn. As she said, my name is Soley Hyman. I'm a PhD candidate at the University of Arizona in astrophysics, and I'm giving this talk today with Allyson, who's going to jump in when she has things to add that I might be leaving out. And Allyson is based at Harvard, and so I joined this project in 2018. But before I get into kind of the history of that, I just kind of want to give you an idea of what the LightSound actually is. And so on the left here, we have an image of totality during a total solar eclipse. On the right, there is a projected image of the sun for an annular eclipse with some children looking at a sunspotter. And so as we're all probably aware, there is a total solar eclipse coming across the United States this April, Monday, April 8th, 2024. And for many of you, you probably think of solar eclipse and you think of a visually stunning and spectacular event, and it is. I've been fortunate enough to see one before, and it is absolutely visually striking. But when we think about the overall population, there are plenty of people who don't necessarily experience everything visually. There are blind individuals, there are low vision individuals, there are people who are non-visual learners or do better with stuff that is not, with visual stimulation. And back in preparation for the 2017 solar eclipse, Allyson and a couple other people at the Harvard Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics wanted to make eclipses more accessible for the blind and low vision community. And this was particularly inspired and helped spearheaded by Wanda Diaz-Merced, who is a blind astronomer. And she is a pioneer in what we call sonification. And so if you've ever seen some of the NASA press releases where you might turn a black hole image into sound, or a field of stars into sound, that's sonification. So it's basically taking some data or signal and converting it into sound. And the idea for this is we're trying to use sound to make eclipses more accessible for blind and low vision individuals. And so the 2017 solar eclipse, it was the Great American Eclipse, was on August 21st and passed across the United States from the Pacific Northwest to the Southeast. And Allyson was out in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, with a prototype of the first LightSound device. She was with a group of undergraduates out there, and they streamed the sound from the device. And I'll talk about exactly how that sound works in a couple minutes. But they used the device as a way to stream the sound, the sonification, so taking data or signals and turning it into sound, to put it on the internet so people around the world could listen to it and experience a solar eclipse by sound, even if they weren't actually there. And so just kind of an overview of the players in this game. So Allyson is on the left.
I'm so sorry to interrupt. The slides aren't progressing. I don't know if you're trying
to. Okay, hang on. Let me stop sharing. I wonder if it's the fact that I'm on the. Let me see, have they changed now? Allyson, can you see anything?
I see nothing. Does anyone else see anything?
Okay. Okay, maybe, do you want to try sharing your slides?
I'll try.
I don't know what is is going on with mine.
Okay. Sorry, folks. I guess we never use Teams. We always use Zoom.
Yep. Thanks for your patience.
Okay. Yeah. Let's see. It's not letting me share. I wonder if this is a browser thing, like you said.
It's possible.
You want to try one more time while I try to update this?
Yeah, let me see if I can switch to a different screen and see if that maybe works.
Okay, I think it's going to make me re-log in, but then I should be able to share. Sorry.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody. We'll hopefully have this up and running momentarily.
Yeah. Let's see. This worked. Still not. Is it sharing at all? I just tried it again.
It's not sharing yet.
Right.
So when you do click to share something, it gives you the option of screen or window. So you may want to try one or the other.
I was trying screen. Let me see if window might work. Okay, it seems like Allyson has it working.
Is this sharing? I can't.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, so it's sharing yours now.
Are you seeing slides?
We're seeing
Yes.
yours, and it looks like it is progressing.
Okay, let me just mute myself.
All right, so thanks for your patience, everyone. I'll kind of bring us back. So just kind of an overview of the team. Allyson and I, as Dawn wonderfully introduced us, and on the right, we have three other main players of this. So Wanda Diaz-Merced, as I mentioned, is a blind astronomer, and she's a pioneer in sonification, not just for outreach, but also for data analysis within the field of astronomy. We have Daniel Davis, who is the director of Harvard's Natural Sciences Lecture Demonstrations. So he builds really neat demos, science demos for all of the main physics and bio and chemistry classes for the undergrads at Harvard. And he was involved with designing the first prototype of the LightSound that I mentioned that was used for the 2017 Eclipse. And then Elliot Richards is also an engineer at Center for Astrophysics at Harvard and Smithsonian. And we've been working on him for the last year or two, developing a PCB version of the LightSound, which PCB stands for printed circuit board. If you've ever opened up a computer or a phone and you see those green boards with a lot of little electronics on them, that's what a PCB is. And so I'll get into actually what that is in a second. But if we continue on, we'll give an overview of what the LightSound is. So as I mentioned before, it's a sonification device, and it is intended for use during a solar eclipse for blind and low vision individuals. And so the idea is that it takes sound and it maps a measured ambient light brightness to some sound. And I'll talk about the different sonification of the particular sonification we use. But I just also want to mention that this project is entirely open source. We have a bunch of instructions on our website and on GitHub on how to build your own in both English, Spanish, and French. We have software, Python software, and I'm working on developing a click and run version of it for collecting and plotting data. So this device can be used both with just headphones and also to record data. And we have 3D case designs also on the website. The stuff you are all welcome to take and modify. We want this to be a community project. We want people to get involved and excited about it. All right, so I'll give a quick overview of the 2017 Eclipse. This on the bottom right, this little device, that is the first prototype of the LightSound. And so as I mentioned, it was used just kind of as a proof of concept. There were 2 locations, one in Wyoming where the sound was streamed to Wanda and a group of students in, I believe, South Africa at the time. So they were listening to, there was a group of blind and low vision students, and they were listening to the sounds of the eclipse from South Africa while it was happening in the United States. And then we had 2 other locations in Kentucky that based out of Morehead State University that actually recorded data. And this plot in the upper left, in the upper right, is the result from that. So this was kind of the first, okay, this works, let's see how we can develop it. And we had some feedback from people, and one of the things that had happened about that device was that it used a square wave. So it worked beautifully, but the sound over a long period of time wasn't the best to listen to. So for the 2019 and 2020 eclipses, total solar eclipses in South America, we redesigned the device, the LightSound, to be kind of its first main version with a MIDI board. So it uses instruments to sonify the sound, the light brightness instead of just a square wave. And so these pictures up here are 2 cases of the use of the device during the 2019 solar eclipse. We had it across Chile and Argentina where the path of totality fell. And as Allyson always likes to say, and I like to say as well, these are 2 great demonstrations of how you can use the device. So on the right, you've got a single person with the LightSound device in his hand and a pair of headphones, over his ears. So he's listening to it as a personal individual experience. And then on the left-hand side, we've got a group of blind and low vision individuals in a large arena in La Serena, Chile, listening on a speaker to the sound of the LightSound device. And so it can be used for both individuals and larger groups. And for the upcoming 2024 eclipse, we've got both scenarios happening. And if we continue, this is a look into the interior, kind of the inner guts of the LightSound. And so we've got 2 main versions. The one we redesigned for the 2019 and 2020 solar eclipses we have on the left, it is what we call the wired LightSound. And so it basically is a bunch of wires that we use to connect these circuit boards that we get from Adafruit, which is a Arduino-based circuit board manufacturer. And on the right, we have this PCB design. So as you probably noticed, there is quite a big difference between how many wires there are on both. The one on the left is a great way, and I'll talk about this a little bit at the end, but we've held some workshops. This is actually how Dawn got involved with LightSound stuff. But we have the wired devices, which are great for learning how to do electrical connections and soldering. The PCB device is really fantastic for building a lot of them. And for the 2024 eclipse, we're aiming to build 750 devices. So if we keep on going, and these are all in their 3D printed cases, this is a sound clip, hopefully, of the LightSound. But before we try to play it, I just want to give you an overview of how it actually works. So as I've mentioned, sonification is mapping some sort of data or signal into sound. In the case of the LightSound, we're trying to sonify a very, very large dynamic range. So we're going from full direct sunlight, which is quite bright, to basically the brightness of the full moon. And so our eyes will adjust over time, but if you just go from those 2 extremes right away, it's quite a big change in light. And so we, in order to kind of signpost and guide the listener a bit more, we have several different sounds that we use. So in very bright sunlight, we have a flute sound that basically the higher the pitch, the brighter the light. And so that flute sound drops until it's kind of in mid-light range. And so this is often like if you're in indoor lighting or in the shade, it'll be a clarinet sound. And so that clarinet sound also continues lowering in pitch until you get to very low light. So like after sunset and darkness, if you're covering your hand over the light sensor, and that is a series of clicks that slow and get more and more spaced out as it gets darker. And we did this for a couple of reasons, mainly to help guide the ear, but also during totality, a lot of things are happening, and you want to be able to hear everything that's happening. So people are reacting, animals, birds, insects are changing their, day patterns of what sounds they're making, and the temperature is changing. And so the choice to use these clicks are another way of allowing you to also experience everything that's going on during totality. So if we want to see, hopefully this will play. I'm not hearing any sound.
I noticed if you want to try to stop sharing and share again, I think there's a toggle switch in the share content that says include computer sound.
And while Allyson does that, I'll just also I gave a little, I showed that image of the insides of the LightSounds. There are kind of 5 main components to the device. You have a light sensor, which is what records the ambient light brightness. You've got the microcontroller board, which in this case is either an Adafruit Flora or an Adafruit Feather board. It's basically the onboard computer that has code that you upload to it, and that's how it determines, based on what light brightness reading that you have, what sound should be played. And then we have a MIDI board, which has the sound library of the different instruments that we use to sonify the light brightness. And then finally, we have a battery, which runs it. You can run it either on a battery or by computer power, and an audio jack, which is where you can plug in speakers or headphones to listen to it. And we can share resources also. Yeah.
I don't see the share volume. Is it under the additional settings? You're muted.
I think you're muted.
Oh, sorry, thanks. When you click share at the very top, there should be something that says share content and a little toggle on and off to include computer sound. But it also depends on what kind of OS you're using, I think.
Because we're in the browser, this is like a little weird. I'm sorry. Everyone, you can hear it on the website, so we'll share that after.
Yeah, I'll just drop that into the chat right now, in case people are interested.
Back to this. Can you still see that?
Right. I just shared the link to the website in the chat. If you scroll down the page, you can listen to this sound clip online. But basically what's going on in this sound clip is it's a simulated example of what is happening during a solar eclipse in much faster time. Someone has a cardboard circle, which is representing the moon over the sun, and they're passing it across the light sensor. And you hear the pitch changing in the recording. All right. So as we mentioned, one LightSound device can be used by a large group, by individual people. For the 2019 and 2020 solar eclipses, for the 2019, we distributed 20 devices across Chile and Argentina. For the 2020 solar eclipse, our collaborators in Chile got funding from the European Southern Observatory to distribute about 100 more of these devices in these kind of inclusive eclipse kits. And so you see this young girl on the bottom right holding this inclusive eclipse kit, which contains, among other things, a LightSound device that she was able to use. So this is kind of the current state of the LightSound. We've been generating a lot of excitement across the United States. This past October, we built and distributed about 200 devices to areas in the annularity path. So if you're based in San Antonio, you're probably well aware of this, that there was an annular eclipse that passed across the United States in October. So we had people with LightSounds then, mainly the PCB versions. We did have some wired LightSounds out there. And then this April, we have the main event, which is the total solar eclipse that's going through Mexico, across a lot of the Midwest and Eastern United States, and up through Canada. And so we've been building a bunch of LightSound devices with help of wonderful people like Dawn through LightSound workshops. And we've been distributing these devices to a bunch of people who have requested devices. We've also been partnering with the American Printing House for the Blind to distribute devices to schools for the blind along the path of totality. So if we keep on going, I think that brings us to, so this is, I'll talk about the workshops in a minute, but this is just kind of the current overview of the map of all the locations in North America and a little bit in Central America where we have LightSound devices located. And so some of these locations will have more than one, but it's been quite exciting over the past couple of years. I joined this project in 2018, and I guess, 6 years later, we now have lots and lots of people who are excited about this device, who are wanting to run their own workshops, who want to get the word out. And so we want to keep this excitement up and keep this awareness about sonification and accessibility, especially for both Eclipse events and in just science in general. We want this to be on all of our radars. And so one of the ways we've been producing all of these devices is through a series of workshops. And so the first workshop we held was in 2020, a winter meeting for the American Astronomical Society. And the idea of it is initially was just to teach people how to build the LightSounds and to kind of develop teach people how to teach people. And it's been working. And so the man in this image on the right here, Greg Mace, is actually a professor at University of Texas, Austin. And he's held some of his own workshops since that first workshop that we taught him how to build this and teach soldering, which is how you build these devices. Dawn is also one of our workshop alums, and she's been fantastic with building a bunch of these devices, helping run other workshops, and doing a lot of fantastic stuff with the LightSound. And so 3 main goals of this is teaching STEM skills. So we're teaching how to build electronics through soldering, which is a skill many people have not encountered before, and also some basics in circuitry. And all of these devices that we're building in these workshops are then donated to people who have requested them, underserved communities, schools for the blind, and we're transferring this knowledge and helping this project develop its own momentum. We've had a series of workshops since that 2020 workshop. This is a quick picture of a workshop we held in New York. There's kind of a make-a-thon where we aim to build a bunch of wired devices with students and other volunteers from the community of Rochester in October 2022. We have in 2023, in my current location of Tucson, Arizona, we ran a workshop for an undergrad program, which is called Time Step, stands for Tucson Initiative for Minoritized Student Engagement in Science and Technology program. So these are all, a lot of them are astronomy majors in their undergraduate, and they're applying to internships in the tech industry, and many of them have never soldered before. So this was a great opportunity to teach them how to solder while also creating devices to be able to donate to communities that have requested them. And I recently talked to the program director of Time Step a couple of weeks ago, and she actually said that some of the students had gotten internships specifically because they had learned how to solder during this workshop. So it's very rewarding to see this being paid forward. Just kind of an overview of a couple other workshops. We recently, last summer, held our first workshop in partnership with Greg Mace at UT Austin. This is where Dawn learned how to build the wired version of the LightSound. And then this past, we also held one in July at the center at Harvard University at a bunch of undergrad, summer school students, and community members learning how to build the PCB version of the LightSound. So this was when we first rolled out that version. It's great for building large numbers of LightSounds because it's a lot faster. You don't have to deal with wires. Less can go wrong with that. And then finally, this past September and also in January, we held some workshops at UT San Antonio. I believe, Dawn, you were there for that. And then this past January at UT Austin again. And just to kind of show how much easier it is to build these LightSounds, Dawn made this wonderful time lapse from our workshop this past January of how to actually assemble one. And so you'll see kind of the speedy version. So she is quite speedy actually in real life of assembling all the parts. So she's putting on first the MIDI board and then the microcontroller board, which is the onboard computer. She's just put on the light sensor on the back of it. And then she's putting in the battery and then is going to step away for a minute or two to do a sound check and make sure the device is working before she puts it away in the case. And so here's the 3D case. It has Braille on it as well as raised text. It says LightSound with our logo, and that's a finished LightSound ready to be distributed to people who have requested it. For this past October 2023 annular eclipse, we had a bunch of devices. Allyson was in Albuquerque with a group of people. Some of them had Bluetooth headphones set up for the devices so multiple people could listen to a device at the same time. It's kind of like a telescope when you're running an event with a LightSound. You want someone kind of stationed at it to explain what it is, what you're supposed to hear, and make sure it hasn't gotten bumped and has moved off its target or anything. But it was a great success there, and we're very excited to see the excitement generated from the 2024 eclipse this April. And we've got a couple more workshops coming up to continue building LightSounds and reach our estimated number of 750 devices to distribute. And I think that might be it. So if you're interested in a LightSound, we have a form to request them. We've also got, that's in the QR code on the bottom right, or bottom left. On the upper right, we have the QR code for the website. I also dropped that link into the chat where we have all of the documentation for both PCB and wired LightSounds. The code, this is all open source. You are welcome to take the stuff and modify it and test it out to your liking. And then just since I've got hopefully a couple more minutes just to wrap up, I just want to talk about one other thing that Allyson and I have been involved with. And so this is still a little bit in progress. We've been focusing all of our energy on making these LightSounds for these eclipses. But after this, we hope to turn our sights back to the Orchestra, which is sonifying color in addition to light brightness. And so basically, as you may be familiar with, red light is longer wavelength than blue light. And so similarly, we're using a sound mapping where red light corresponds to lower pitches and blue light is higher pitches. And so it's a similar design, but instead of a light brightness sensor, we have a color sensor. And so it basically tells you how much red, green, and blue you're getting. It can be either absorbed light, so it just, if you have like a red flashlight that you're shining on it, it will give you a red sound, or it has an LED on it that can reflect light, so you can shine it at your jeans and hear that they're blue, or maybe your shirt is red. But this is the Orchestra that's a little bit more in development, but we hope to be able to bring that to the community soon as well. So I think that's everything I have. Allyson, if you have anything to add, but with that, I think I'd be happy to take questions.
I just want to add that I think Don holds the record for fastest LightSound built with 7 minutes, right?
No, that's Jim. Jim from the Texas School for the Blind and Visually Impaired. I came in at 8.
8. Oh,
but
close.
Yeah, the difference between building the first iteration of the wired and the newer version, in the time it took me to build the first iteration, I built 6 of the newer version. So it's a huge improvement, and it definitely helps to kind of, increase the number that you guys can get out there to folks. So it's a brilliant device, and I think we're going to try to get at least one more group or collection of them, and some folks here in at least the Austin, Travis County area to building sound for folks. So we'll put out a call to our Hill Country Eclipse team and see who needs them, and work with Allyson and Soley to get those to you all. But yeah, any questions? Please feel free to unmute yourself and ask away. Or if you can't chat, or if you can't talk, you can put questions in the chat. Oh, Danielle's asking, will there be any more local workshops before April?
I don't know. There's a slight possibility. I'll be back in Austin March 6th. And so depending on how it goes with this March 2nd workshop, or if we don't think we can build all the devices we need to, I was considering in the back of my head, but nothing's been solidified. But Austin's definitely would be the place that it would happen if we do it. So I'll keep you posted, of course, if it does.
Sounds good. Excellent. I'd love to know, got a goal of 750. It looks like you've got a large number that are already out across the US and into Central America and the Caribbean. What is your vision for, what will happen after this eclipse with those devices? What is your thought behind how those might be utilized, maybe not just for eclipses?
Yeah, in my head, there's kind of two main things. One, like we've already done this, so for the annular, it's a different path, right? So some of those folks aren't really in much of totality, or they're not going to use it. So we're reusing them, and we did this with 2019, 2020. So if you're not going to use the device, we ask for it back, and then we'll give it to another person that's hosting an event. But there is definitely a use beyond that, which is like education and outreach. So just teaching folks about eclipses or light variation of any kind. And so there's a place in a classroom or outreach event where you can continue to use this. So a lot of people, I think, are going to hang on and use it for that.
That's great. I know one of the intentions that we're hoping to do with our LightSound devices here in Austin that will be used after the eclipse is to get them into our library system for folks to check out should they happen to travel elsewhere to visit eclipses. So hoping to really see what kind of spread those get.
Very cool. Yeah, and obviously eclipses happen everywhere, right? And so even though this is the last one in the U.S. for a while, Europe, Australia, South Africa, they're getting hit hard over the next few years. So we hope to get some out there as well.
Yeah, Australia alone has 5, I think, in the next 10 or 12 years.
Yeah. Another potential use, I haven't had much time to work on this at all, but when we were first testing the light sensor to make sure it was sensitive enough to get the small changes during totality, I had actually tested it during the end of a lunar eclipse. And so it was a very low signal, but there is potential that could be something that people could explore, especially if someone's interested in kind of digging into the code for Arduino and maybe changing a little bit the mapping of the device and kind of making a specific lunar eclipse version of the code. So that might be another interesting outlet, because of course lunar eclipses are much more frequent because they've got much broader paths of eclipse.
That's a great application. I look forward to seeing how that develops. There's some other options as far as resources that are out there right now, especially for the blind and visually impaired communities. And I might have to take off my background, but let's see if this shows up. No, let me toggle off my background here. So this is a book that was developed with NASA and other partners. And it is a purely textual document. It only has 2 pages, but it goes to great lengths to allow a raised text surface and braille for the blind and visually impaired to get a sense of the various types of eclipses. So it talks about partiality, totality, and the different phases of an eclipse. It has a path. As you can see, it has both the path for 2017 for the annular and for the total. And these are just one of the many resources that's been put out to help make eclipses more accessible. Some things to think about when it comes to, this upcoming eclipse and ensuring that we're getting, the information out to folks, making sure that we're making it as accessible and inclusive as possible, taking into consideration, minority and underserved communities. A lot of the Eclipse resources that are online, several books, videos have been translated and are bilingual, so that is an option, or they do have the closed captioning available. Also take into consideration, your elderly and disabled communities, senior centers, care facilities. If you have a large community of care facilities or a large senior community, those are folks that may not necessarily be able to go to where they can observe the eclipse. So reaching out to those within your community and within your towns to see what sort of accessibility is being made. Do they have glasses? Do they have somebody on staff who can explain the features of what's going on during the eclipse? Or do they have a large area that they can live stream? So the eclipse is going to be crossing into just outside of Mazatlan, starting at 10:51 a.m. our time on Monday 8th. And it's going to exit out of Maine at about 3:41 p.m. our time. So that whole entire time, there's going to be a multitude of places, not just here in Central Texas, but all across the 15 states it's crossing through, where folks can live stream for that entire time. So there's a huge opportunity to make accessible, screens, folks for, being able to observe on the computers. If you have a small theater or even a large theater that might be interested in making available a live stream of the eclipse, so folks can be indoors, seated in an air-conditioned area, which might be more conducive to their needs. That's something to consider. Special needs in general, a lot of folks, focus on just eclipse glasses. And there are a lot of folks out there that don't necessarily like having things touching their face or touching their skin. So there are definitely a bunch of different options, from eclipse cards to what I found is a really useful tip, especially for little kids, is to take eclipse cards or eclipse glasses, and you can either tape them to the brim of a baseball cap. So no matter where they look, they're looking at the eclipse safely. Or there's also a link we're going to be putting on the portal later today that shows how to put insert a pair of eclipse glasses into a paper plate to make it a little bit easier for folks to observe, so that they have everything obscured with the exception of just those little sleeves of solar film. The other thing is just, understanding, who's affected by the eclipses. Obviously, we've talked about those that are young, but, there are folks that are, sequestered in medical facilities, children's hospitals. So think about who in your community may not have the ability to get out to observe the eclipse, and how you might be able to help serve them and provide that resource and that opportunity. Even something like, secure facilities or prisons, that might be an opportunity to reach out to a group that may not necessarily be considered when it comes to the eclipse. And then a phrase I heard recently, which is, if you can't look up, look down, because there's so many different ways to view the eclipse indirectly, whether it's just looking at the eclipse through breaks in trees and branches, to punch cards, to cereal box eclipse viewers. So there are a tremendous amount of opportunities and resources of ways to make this available to everyone and everyone. So we're going to continue to put those links and that information on the portal. If you're working on planning an event for a private venue or for your community, also thinking about, what sort of indoor facilities you have for folks. If you have an area you can designate as a quiet zone to observe the eclipse, that may be beneficial to individuals who don't feel comfortable in large crowds or around a lot of noise. Another thing to consider is there's actually a series of symptoms that occur commonly within people with dementia and Alzheimer's called sundowners. So there are medical circumstances that might make it challenging for folks to observe the eclipse if that's not taken into consideration. And those people usually struggle with symptoms when it starts getting dark in the evening, and they're going to be even more confused by the fact that it's happening midday. So a whole bunch of information, folks to reach out to, and ways to make this as available to every single person. Other than that, we only have a few Lunch and Learn sessions left. The end of this month, on Tuesday, February 27th, we're going to be joined by Justin Calhoun, who is with the City of Fredericksburg and the Gillespie EDC. He's going to be talking about emergency management. And then on March 12th, we are going to discuss citizen science and all the different ways that folks can participate in collecting data and information during the eclipse and before and after. On the 26th of March, that's kind of going to be our pre-eclipse check-in. Get a few last minute things in order, make sure there aren't any outstanding questions or concerns or needs, and then plow towards April 8th. In the meantime, we are going to have 2 more ancillary sessions that are going to be set up for anyone who's interested in learning about how to recycle their glasses after the eclipse. And for folks that are interested in contributing information and data that they've obtained during the eclipse. How many visitors came to your community? What kind of event did you have? What was the planning like for you? We're hoping to put together a lot of information from our experience here in the Hill Country that could hopefully help other folks that are going to be experiencing eclipses in the future. So as usual, I will stick around till the end of the hour. I want to thank Soley and Allyson again for being on this call and for just giving a wonderful presentation. I'm so impressed with what you guys have helped to create and love to see that this is getting such huge traction across the country and so many people are getting involved. If there are any questions, like I said, I will stick around. Feel free to put them in the chat or to just unmute yourself and ask them. But otherwise, thanks for being on this call today, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Thanks so much for having us, Dawn.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you so much.